I didn't know that was going to happen. This is a real estate conference. How's everybody doing? Are you guys excited to be here or what? Holy shit, is this a golf tournament? I'm really excited about what we're putting on, and most of you in the room understand what we're doing here and why we're all here together. It's about trying to get more people into real estate investing in Canada, but in doing that, it's also about trying to get people doing it the right way. We're in a real broken place in this country right now. Does everybody understand what I'm talking about when I say that? We've got a lot of issues going on in this country, and they're not just about a lack of housing. We all know we're in a housing crisis. But I think the bigger challenge in real estate investing and doing this stuff is there's so many people out there that don't have the benefit of getting into training and getting into an environment where they can learn to do things the right way, that they're making major mistakes. I was just talking to Kyle Ford in the speaker's room back there, and he was telling me about two major funds that have declared bankruptcy in the last 60 days that have lost Canadians over $50 million. People that have put their hard-earned money into projects that it's just completely disappeared. And so I knew when I decided that I was going to start helping people to get into real estate investing that I had a responsibility to not just help people to get into it, but to bring together an incredible group of coaches and mentors and experts that could teach people to do it the right way. And that's why we're all here, to do it the right way, to make the most money. How many people want to get fucking rich? But if you do want to become wealthy, what's more exciting to you, to become wealthy or to become wealthy and keep that money so that it can be part of a legacy you pass on to your kids and the people you love? That's what we really want to do. Now, the other thing that I love about what I do and what we're doing here together and what you're going to see in this conference that I believe you're not going to see at any other conference is the fact that I love to give stuff away. And I happen to own a company that's building a portfolio of hotels and resorts and vacation properties right across Canada. And so we've decided over this weekend, we're going to give away $100,000 in cash and prizes and free vacations. How many people here like the idea of free vacations? Right, exactly. The reason that I'm trying to get everybody comfortable with publishing content on social media is when I look at what I've built in my real estate business today, I can say unequivocally that what I have in real estate is directly related to the size of my following in Canada, to the millions of people that are paying attention to what I'm doing because of the content that I've created. And so if you as a real estate investor can get comfortable publishing content and letting everybody know what you're doing and being open about it, you're going to attract more people to you. Does that make sense to everybody? How many people in this room are regularly publishing content and putting it online right now? Raise your hands good and high if you are. So of the 600 or 700 people who are here, I just saw 5 hands. How many people here are scared to death of doing a video of themselves and publishing it on the internet? So that's what I want to try and help everybody to get over. So what we're going to do is we're going to run a weekend-long contest. And the way you get into the contest is by publishing content, putting pictures online, putting videos online. Take pictures of anything you see here. Tell the world what you're doing here. And in every post online, you need to put that hashtag. So first of all, I'm putting this event on for you. That's the whole reason that we've spent $1 million to put this event together, is for each of you to get together and know each other. My biggest piece of advice to everybody is while you're here this weekend, get to know each other. I have this fundamental belief about real estate investing. What I try to do whenever I'm explaining concepts to people and helping folks to understand something, I ask myself, how can I make that simple? How can I make people understand that at a simple level? Because once you understand the simple idea, it's easier to dig deeper into it and learn the complexities of an idea. And so this whole event is wrapped around what you see on this page right now. So today, my company owns a portfolio that's growing in value. It's about, I want to say 50 million, somewhere in that range right now. But as we build more hotels and resorts, it's going to start to grow. I started real estate investing 25 years ago. I started doing very simple things like owning rental properties and flipping properties. And it's evolved into now building resorts and building communities, if you will. When I look at the journey that I went on, and I start asking myself, like, what are the fundamental skills that tie all this together? Here's the firmest belief that I have. If there's anybody in this room that truly has a dream of one day owning $100 million worth of real estate, all you have to do is master these 4 skills you see on this page. This entire event this weekend is wrapped around these 4 steps. And it's really simple what they are. I'm going to go over them briefly right now and kind of set the stage for the whole weekend of learning. All you have to do if you're going to build a big real estate business is master these 4 skills. Number 1, you have to figure out how to find properties that you can acquire under their real value, that you can acquire at a discount of what they are actually worth. Number 2, you got to figure out how to raise money. You have to understand how to get the money to do deals. One of the things that is in common with the most successful real estate investors in the world, we have 3 keynote speakers here this weekend. How many people are slightly excited about Mr. Wonderful being here with us this weekend? Yeah. Michelle Romano, Kevin O'Leary, and Mike Holmes, all 3 of them own 9-figure real estate portfolios. And you know what they all have in common? It's not the real estate that they have, because they have all kinds of different real estate in their portfolios. The one thing they all have in common is they all have never spent a dime of their own money doing this stuff, building that portfolio. Now you think about Kevin O'Leary, who, I don't know if he's a billionaire or not, but he certainly has billions of dollars worth of assets, companies, real estate, everything that he owns. But you think about a guy like that has billions of dollars under management, and he's never used a dime of his own money to build his own real estate portfolio. They borrow all the money to do it. The most successful people in the world do. And if you think about anybody that's in real estate investing, well, actually, would you guys agree with me? I believe the number 1 challenge that most people have trying to do real estate is just getting money to do the deals. You guys agree with that statement? So you're going to hear a lot about raising money this weekend and the different techniques that experts are using and the different systems for doing that. The third thing is increasing the value of the real estate. Later on this weekend, I'm going to show you exactly how we acquired an old dilapidated resort in Napanee, Ontario. We bought it for cheaper than what it was worth now. But the secret to doing real estate is when you buy that property, you know you're getting it undervalued, but you also have to know that you can increase the value of it. And we'll talk about some techniques for doing that. But there's a word that I believe is the most important word in all of real estate investing. Actually, let's see if people in the community are actually paying attention to me. So there's one word more important than any other word in real estate investing, which defines what you do with properties when you acquire them. And if anybody knows what that word is in their mind, I'm going to count to 3, and I want you to all yell it out at the top of your lungs. And this will tell me if we're all on the same page or not. 1, 2, 3. Lift. Absolutely. Thank you, guys. Lift. For those that have never heard this term before, all lift means is increasing the value of something. The lift is the delta. The lift is the difference between what you pay for a property and the money you put into it and what it's worth when it's stabilized. In other words, when the renovations are done and everything's finished. At the Hay Bay Resort, we bought the property for $3 million. We had an appraisal done immediately, and they told us it was worth $4.8 million. We put together a plan to turn it into a 5-star resort with 31 cottages, a 300-seat convention center, an 80-seat restaurant, a 50-slip marina for boats, a beautiful beach. I mean, it's crazy what we're doing out there. We got a budget put together that said to do that whole project, it's going to cost $23 million. So I borrowed the $3 million to buy the property. Then we literally, and I'm really excited about this, just in the last week, finally concluded raising all the funds to finish this resort. I'm really excited to tell you that
a very good friend of mine, a mortgage broker named Rena from Sear Financial, who's here. If you're doing, is there anybody here that's doing development real estate, that's building apartment buildings, building resorts, building anything? Anybody here that's building big projects, make sure you talk to Rena. Is Rena in the room right now? Okay, she's probably out at her booth. Rena from Sear Financial is the mortgage broker that just arranged an $18 million construction mortgage for us to finish our project. And I had literally gone through hundreds of lenders trying to get this financing arranged, and it was Rena, after I'd already talked to everybody in Canada, that found the money for us to do this project. So if there's anybody that's looking to build a big project, you need to talk to this woman. She's amazing. So now that we have all the financing in place, we're building that project out. When we're finished, we're going to have $26 million in debt on that property. But before I had $1 put into the project, I had an ARV appraisal done. I had an appraisal done, and listen carefully to this. I had an appraisal done that told me what it was going to be worth when it was finished, and also told me what it was going to be worth after a year of operations. That's the biggest scale of this lift idea, but let me explain how it worked out. When it's finished, it's going to be worth $26 million. After 1 year, with the business running, it's going to be worth $54 million. So that means we're going to have a resort that we owe $26 million on, but it's worth $54 million. It's a lot. That difference is lift. That difference comes from increasing the value. So whenever you do any type of real estate deal, you got to make sure that before you acquire, before you waive your conditions, that you know that you're getting it under value, you know exactly what you're going to put into the renovations to increasing the value, and you know what it's going to be worth at the end. And you do it all through appraisals. It makes this whole thing really easy. The last part of those 4 steps is the exit, is getting out of the property. It's really simple. If you master these 4 steps, finding undervalued properties, getting the money to do them, increasing the value of the properties, and then you exit. Now, when you exit from a real estate deal, it really depends on what type of real estate deal you're doing. If you're doing a simple deal like a flip, the exit is when you sell the property. If you're building apartment buildings like my friend Steve Mills is, the exit is when everything is stabilized and finished and you take out all of your construction financing and you put your long-term loan in place. When we're finished the Hay Bay Resort, we're going to have $26 million in debt. There's a bank in Ontario who's already committed to giving us a new first mortgage for $26 million so we can pay back all the temporary financing at a lower rate. That's the exit. You're going to hear lots of little tidbits over the weekend, lots of little pieces of advice that are very, very important. And I can't help when they come out because they come into my head, they come out my mouth. Here's another one. Never, ever get into a deal unless you know how you're getting out of the deal. I have never, ever gotten into a real estate deal without knowing how I'm going to get out of that deal. And it's not just me knowing in my head I'm going to sell it at the end. It's documentation, getting appraisals done, getting all the work put together in the documentation to prove that you can get out of that deal and creating a solid exit for yourself. So we're going to get into that in more details in a second. But first, I feel like I don't need to tell you anything about me because wasn't that video at the beginning fucking cool? I've never seen that. I thought that was pretty neat. I like that. It was really cool. All right. Anyway, how did I get into real estate investing? What I think is really neat about what we're doing here together is in this group, there are people from every walk of life. And the thing I love about real estate investing is nothing you've done in your past will determine how well you do in real estate investing. I've seen people that are unemployed that get into real estate investing and make millions of dollars. I've seen people with incredible careers outside of this profession that get into it and succeed in it. And so I want everybody to know that it doesn't matter what you did before. As long as you do this the right way, you'll win. My background is crazy. I spent 15 years in investigative policing. I worked undercover in drugs. I was a police interrogator. I did a whole bunch of stuff. What was really interesting about getting into real estate for me is that it happened because of the craziest thing in the world. When I was 30 years old, my wife came home from work one day. We'd been married for about 6 months. She told me she was pregnant. To be honest with you, I couldn't figure out how that happened. We were using every contraception in the world at the same time, but I was excited. How many parents are in the room today? How many people here have kids? I believe in procreation. Yeah, let's go out and make more babies. My wife came home from work and told me that she was pregnant. She told me that we were expecting. Now, I was incredibly excited about this. As long as I can remember, I said that if I accomplished anything in my life, I wanted to accomplish being a great dad. I wanted to have kids. I wanted to put all my energy into raising kids. I'd always dreamed about it. When Julie came home and said she was pregnant, it scared the living shit out of me because I didn't have the money to do it. How many parents in the room remember when you first found out that you were going to be a parent, and then the very first thing you think about is the lack of money you have, and you ask yourself, how am I going to pay for this? Look at all the dads just put their hands up. So all I could think of is I had to do something to change that, to make more money in my life. I was making decent money as a cop. I was making $100,000 a year. I knew that all my buddies that were cops were all doing things on the side, so I knew I had to go out and make more money. What I did is I went to the only person I knew in Ottawa, Canada, who made a lot of money. Him and his father owned an insurance company. They were millionaires. I walked into his office and I said, my wife is pregnant. I'm going to be a dad. I need to make more money. Can I come and sell insurance? And he started laughing when I told him that. And I couldn't figure out why he was laughing. And I asked him, what's so funny about this? And he said, on the weekend, he and his father were talking about me. Essentially, they owned an insurance company. They had over 50,000 clients in this insurance business. And the biggest issue they had in their business is that they constantly were being asked by these people that trusted them with their house insurance about mortgages. People would call them asking for referrals to get refinances done and all these mortgages done. And they knew that they wanted to start a mortgage company. They just didn't have the time to do it themselves. And as they were talking about who they could potentially partner with or how they could provide mortgages to their clients. And they had this conversation on the weekend where they thought if they could find somebody like me that would come and do this with them, then they could start a mortgage company. His dad came into the office 5 minutes later and they made an offer to me that changed my life. Now, you got to remember, I was dead broke at the time. I went into his office. We started talking. 5 minutes later, his dad was looking at me and he said, hey, listen, we want to start a mortgage company. We need somebody to run it. We'll pay you what you make as a cop. You can quit your job. We're going to run the business out of this office here. I'll put all the money into it. I'll pay you 5% of the net profits of the company, and I'll give you 20% ownership in the business. Do you want to do it? I said, fuck yeah, let's go. But think about the risk that took. I had a job that I'd been doing for 15 years. I was making $100,000 a year doing it. I had all the securities of that profession. And I can promise you guys, law enforcement is one of the only careers in the world where nobody's getting laid off. It was safe and secure, and I gave it all up in an instance to take an opportunity in a business that I knew nothing about. How many people in this room, if you were faced with the exact same situation, would take that risk? Raise your hands good and high if you would take that. And be honest, if you wouldn't, I understand it. Understanding how to take risks and to run and to be an entrepreneur is everything Kevin O'Leary is going to talk about on Sunday, and you definitely don't want to miss that talk. I did that. I said yes right on the spot. We made a plan for how we're going to do it. Then I went home and told my pregnant wife. And of course, anybody that knows me knows I'm fairly enthusiastic. So I walk into the house and I look at my wife and I asked her how she was feeling, and she told me she was in the first trimester and she said she was doing okay, and I know she was having a rough time. And I looked at her, I said, honey, our lives are about to change. We're gonna be rich. That's probably not the right way to explain that, but that's what I did. And she looked at me. And this is when I knew that my approach to telling her this was wrong. She looked at me and scowled and said, what did you do? And I explained that I had just quit my job and we were starting a business, and she started crying. Oh my God, it was amazing. Well, we started that business, and true to their word, they taught me everything that they knew about mortgages. In 4 years, we funded just over $400 million in mortgages. We made $40 million in revenue. We built a team of about 20 mortgage brokers as part of that business. I paid off all of my debt, put about $2 million in savings. Now, this is how I got into real estate investing. My mentor, the owner of the insurance company, he said, there's 2 conditions that I'm going to put in place. If you're going to do this with me, there's 2 things that you have to do. The first thing was, he said, you got to get out of bed every morning at 5 o'clock in the morning. And I said, yeah, I can handle that. This dude used to call me at 5:05 in the morning. It was the craziest thing. The second thing he said is once you pay off all your debt, every dime you have, we're going to use that money to build a real estate business. And he taught me 25 years ago how to do all the stuff that I'm sharing with you today. And that's how it all happened. What was really cool was I followed his advice. 4 years later, we'd paid off all our debt. We were making tons of money. We had a portfolio of 18 condos and apartments in Ottawa based on what I got from him. And then he walked into my office one day. I remember this like it was yesterday. I was learning all this stuff from him in real time. He walked into my office, so Wednesday morning, I think. He looked at me and he says, hey, I've got some great news. And I said, what? And he said, I'm going to buy you out. I didn't even know what that meant. I thought I was in shit. I literally started shaking. I'm like, what did I do wrong? What's going, how can I fix this? He started laughing and he says, I just had the business appraised. The business is worth $40 million and I'm going to buy your 20%. How much money did he pay me? $8 million. It was the most amazing business experience that I've ever had in my life. And I've built my entire life around what he taught me 25 years ago. So I literally exited from that mortgage business, moved down to Whitby where we live today. I got out of mortgages, but I never stopped investing in real estate. And I think that experience is really what set up the rest of my life. The whole reason that I do everything that I do, that I work as hard as I do, and the folks that are in our community that are here, you see how hard that I'm moving, how fast I'm moving, how hard I'm working. The whole reason I do it is because of this slide right here. I was broke at 30 years old when this started. I had no money whatsoever. I've given my kids, my son is 23 today, my daughter is 21. My son went to university. We paid for the whole education. He got into the hospitality world. He lives in St. Andrews, Scotland now, works as the assistant director of golf in the land where golf was created. He's living his best life, no student debt, nothing to worry about. My daughter is in her last year at Ottawa University, finishing a degree, preparing to do a master's degree, no debt. My kids, before they turned 18, had traveled in 20 countries around the world. And why am I telling you that? It's because the number one thing, the first thing that I want you to start thinking about is a reason for what you're doing. A reason for doing real estate that's bigger than you. Now, for a lot of us, it's going to be about your family, and that's fine. But what I did when I was 30 years old and I started having kids is I obsessed about it. Every single day I woke up, I couldn't stop thinking about the shitty state my life was in at the time and how I was going to fix it. And friends, I have to tell you, if you're going to succeed doing this stuff, you need to have a reason for doing it that gets you out of bed in the morning. You need to have a reason for building it, for going out there and hustling and doing more, for literally going and doing your job all day and then spending 3 or 4 hours every night building a real estate business. You need to have a reason for doing that won't stop you under any circumstances. That's really what it comes down to. So let me show you another example. Remember what I was saying about these 4 steps. And literally, if you're taking notes, just write this down and start really focusing on it. Number 1, you got to buy properties undervalued. Number 2, you got to arrange the money to do it. I'm going to teach everybody right now a technique for raising money that I guarantee you will be a new technique to a lot of people in this room. It's called debt stacking. Now, how many mortgage brokers are here today? Raise your hand if you're a mortgage broker. All right, 20 or 30 of them. I'm going to give you permission to use this term when you're talking to your clients because it's going to make you sound really smart. And you might think you know what debt stacking is, but I'm going to give you a new perspective on it. So here's the deal. This is a cottage that I bought back in 2017, just north of Peterborough on a lake called White Lake. It was a 3-season dilapidated cottage. I paid $465,000 for this property. When I bought the property, I financed 100% of the money to buy it. So I got a first mortgage from a mortgage broker for $300,000. I got a second mortgage from 3 of my buddies. They lent me the money from their RSPs to buy the property. And then to renovate it, I put $200,000 into it. I borrowed that money too. So 465 grand to buy the property. We gutted the place, we lifted it up, we put a basement in, cost $200,000. And this is what it looked like when it was finished. We basically took an old dilapidated property and turned it into a beautiful home. And what's really cool is I literally was out there 3 days ago and I stopped into the place who I sold it to. So I sold the place for $1.385 million. So I had about $700,000 into it with the first mortgage, the second mortgage, the money I borrowed to do the renovations. And during that time that I was doing those renovations, I spent about $50,000 in interest payments. So I was into the project for 750 grand. And I sold it for $1.385 million. So I made about $600,000 in profit on the deal. I literally went out to this place 4 days ago. I was out at one of my other cottages. I dropped in and checked it out. The people that bought it from me freaking love it. It's amazing. You're going to hear this all weekend. My whole goal is to put a group of speakers on stage this weekend and some experts that we've even paid to come and be with us this weekend to prove these 4 points to you. You're going to see it over and over again this weekend, how this all works together. Because of those cottages, so what I originally started doing before the pandemic, my plan was to build a short-term rental business, have 100 cottages across Canada. The pandemic happened, nobody could leave Canada, everybody wanted to buy cottages. I couldn't buy cottages under value, so I stopped doing it. One of my agents came to me and said, would you look at a cottage resort? This was the Perfect View Resort in Napanee, Ontario. I went down there in February of 22, I think. We looked at the property. It was disgusting. These little cottages that you see on the waterfront were 50 years old. They had rats running around in them, mice running around them when we looked in them, but it was full. There were many, many people staying in these. There were people fishing on the ice at the time. So we bought the property for $3.2 million. We had an appraisal done. And they told us it was worth $4.8 million, so we bought it under value. We put together a plan. We hired the architects we needed. We hired the construction team we needed. We put together a plan to turn this into what you see here, a $26 million property, and it's going to be done next July, on July 1st. Is anybody excited that this place is finally going to be open? I'm telling you, it's been an amazing project. Is there anybody here that's actually an investor in this project? Yeah, I figured, okay. So all you guys that are investors in the project, make sure you go talk to Kim Garrett-Sousa. She's the general manager of the resort. If you haven't met her yet, make sure you take the time to do that. It's going to be freaking amazing. Look at this place. It's going to open on July 1st. The week before that, all the investors and I are going to go up there for a week and test everything. It's going to be a ton of fun. But it's the same thing. It's like how we do this. This is what it looked like last October, about 40% complete in this picture. We have another property that I'm going to tell you about tomorrow. Is there anybody here interested in doing something like this? Buying an old dilapidated resort, renovating it, turning it into some beautiful property. So I'm going to do a full training on how to do this tomorrow. But this is another property we're working on right now. It's called Lake St. Peter. It's just north of Bancroft, Ontario. We bought it for $2 million. We're putting $8 million into it. It's going to be worth $14 million the day that it opens. And this is the third property that we're working on. This is called Chelton Beach in Prince Edward Island. So this is on the south shore of PEI. It's a gorgeous property. You can see the bridge from where it is. We bought this for $1.3 million. We're putting $20 million into it, and we're building a full Nordic spa. It's going to have about 35 cottages on the property. It's going to have a beautiful spa. I mean, it's going to be freaking amazing. There's nothing like this in this entire province. When it's finished, it's going to be worth $60 million. We have all of these appraisals in place. Now, the other thing I want to tell you about, I want you guys to understand how all this stuff fits together, because once you master these skills, you can do anything with them. I use these 4 skills to build all my real estate holdings, to build my entire real estate business. I also use the same 4 skills to buy businesses. When you get a second out there, you're going to get a chance to stop by the Canadian Hot Tubs booth. Last year, I bought this company for $1 million. We haven't had it appraised yet. We knew we were going to get the value up to $10 million pretty quickly. But this company, when we bought it, we were doing $80,000 a month in revenue. We've had months where we've made $400,000 already, and it's all the same skills. And what I'm really excited about is we're doing something this afternoon that you would never expect to see at a real estate event, but we have an incredible physician that's coming here this afternoon, and he's going to talk about hydrotherapy and explain why everybody should really pay attention to hydrotherapy. And I'm using this event to launch a brand new product. This is our new ChillFlex system. So over the last, I want to say, 8 months, we went to China, we found a partner, we built a chiller and a process where I believe it's going to save lives. Is anybody here doing cold plunging right now? Is anybody jumping in a cold tub every day? When Dr. Will talks to you this afternoon, you're going to understand why everybody should be doing this. But what makes this cold plunging system special is it's the first cold plunge system launched in North America that's fully integrated into a watch and an app. So that means you can literally increase the temperature, decrease the temperature from your app. When you're in the cold plunge, you get in it every day, your watch records all of your internal functions, your blood pressure, your oxygenation levels, all of the issues that are going on in your body. It puts all the information in an app, and it will show you how your health is improving every day that you do this. But you know the coolest thing about it, the reason I'm telling you that, it's because it's the same 4 steps that I used. I found a business that I bought for less money than what it was actually worth. I increased the value. I created lift in the business. I borrowed all the money to do it. And I'm going to exit by refinancing the business, giving my original lenders back their money, and living happily ever after with an asset that's growing. It's amazing. Now, as we're scrolling through this, I want to just segue away from the story and tell you about some of the things that really made me start doing all of this training and teaching people. Of course, over the years, I had a chance to meet thousands of people that were doing real estate investing. And I started to see there were some common mistakes that people were making when they get into real estate investing. And I want to talk to you about the 3 biggest ones that I've seen before. And I want you to openly think about this. And listen, if you realize that you've made one of these mistakes, then celebrate that, because we're going to show you how to change it. The first mistake that I've seen so many people make, and if you're new to, actually, let me ask you, is there anybody that's here today that is not actually doing real estate investing right now, but they've been wanting to get into it, and they came here hoping that this might be the spark that gets them started? Just raise your hands if you're brand new to real estate investing. Great, okay. So you guys are going to benefit the most from this, because I guarantee you everybody else that's already in this game made this mistake in their first deal. Whenever I do any type of real estate investing, the very first thing I do before I buy the property is I do the math. I figure out exactly what the numbers are in the deal. So I make sure that I'm buying it under value. I get a full budget put together and figure out exactly what this thing is going to cost me. I figure out what the money I'm going to borrow is going to cost me. Then I get another appraisal done, and I figure out what it's going to be worth after the renovations are done. And I do all of that before I buy the first property. Most people I talk to, they go out, they get excited about something, they buy it, they don't even sit down and figure out what it's going to cost to fix it up. In fact, I'll prove that to you. I want you guys all to be very honest with me. Raise your hands if, when you did your very first real estate deal, you're willing to admit that you didn't do any math, you didn't figure it out, you just got excited and went and bought something. So the folks that are new to this stuff, learn from that. Just don't do it. Do it differently. The next thing is people use their own money. Seen this happen a lot. I've asked this question to people thousands of times. I would bet money to you right now that in this room, there are literally at least a dozen people who have bought a piece of real estate, bought a little house or bought an apartment. Their idea was that they could rent it out, make it pay for itself, make a couple $100 a month, and live happily ever after. They used their own money to buy that first property. Then something went sideways in the economy. Something went sideways in the value. Now they own an apartment and they're losing money every month. They're losing $50. They're losing $100. Who's willing to raise their hand? In fact, do it. Everybody look around. Raise your hand if you currently own a little apartment somewhere or a little property somewhere and you're losing $50 to $100 a month on it right now. Everybody look around. It's a big problem because of the economy. The worst part about that story is so many people get into real estate investing and they use their own money on their first deal. You don't have to do that. You're going to know exactly how to use other people's money properly by the end of this weekend. And the third thing is that exit. People don't truly understand how to exit from a property. If I succeed with what we've put together this weekend, every single one of you is going to know exactly how to leave here and create a 6 to 7 figure portfolio for yourself. Some of you guys are going to do this very, very quickly. My personal mission is literally to help tens of thousands of new Canadians to get into real estate investing. Here's my thought process. I know there's a housing crisis going on. And I have to be honest with you, I am not happy with politicians. Are there any politicians here today? Great, because you'd be fucking offended in about 3 minutes from now. Is there anybody here that's offended by profanity? Okay, you're full of shit. I do humbly apologize up front. When I get on stage, I'm very nervous. I manage my nerves by swearing profusely, so just bear with me on it. I really want to help a lot of people get into real estate investing because I believe it's the only way to stop the housing crisis. So let's think about the journey that I've been on. And this is the point I'm going to use to prove this idea in my mind. And you guys can then tell me if I'm crazy or not. I believe that if we're going to start this housing crisis behind us and get rid of it, it's not going to happen the way the politicians think they can solve it. And I really got passionate about this idea after I watched Krista Freeland on a job site in downtown Toronto last summer, the summer of 2023. It was amazing. They were announcing all these new programs to stop the housing problem, to build more houses and stop the housing crisis. And Krista Freeland was making an announcement that the federal and provincial government were giving $500 million to 3 developers that were currently building condo projects in downtown Toronto. Think about that for a second. Here's the way my mind thought through that process. $500 million they were giving to people that their condo buildings they were building were over halfway finished already. So anybody that understands development knows that if you're building an apartment building or a condo building, you have to have all your financing arranged before they'll let you start building. So that means these guys already had the financing for those projects arranged, and the government gave them $500 million to finish the projects. Does that make any sense to anybody? So what my mind said was, none of what they're doing is really going to solve the problem. Now, they have done some really great things. You'll hear over the weekend how CMHC works, and there's new CMHC programs that will let people borrow 95% of the money to build an apartment building. So there's good stuff that they're doing. But I believe that if we're going to solve this housing crisis, we got to get thousands of new people into real estate investing. Because here's what's naturally going to happen. When you first start in real estate, you need to do projects that are really simple, that you can put more cash in your pocket and make more money. I believe everybody should be flipping properties when they first get started. Why? It's because it's where you're going to learn the most and you're going to put some extra money in your pocket. So I'm thinking, if I look at my own journey, I started out buying little apartments and flipping properties. Now I'm at the point, 25 years, where I'm building developments, where I'm building stuff, large scale. I believe that every single person in this room, if you're brand new and you start off just flipping a few properties, over time you're going to be building apartment buildings. And that's the only way we're going to solve this housing problem. That's the only way it's going to happen. Let's talk about these 4 steps really quickly, and then we'll sum up and move on. First, buying undervalued properties. What most people don't realize is that undervalued properties are all around us. This is a property that I bought. It's a duplex in Oshawa, Ontario. I literally bought this 6 months ago. I have a team in this house right now ripping it apart and renovating it. They just had new windows and doors put in 2 days ago. I paid $520,000 for the property, but I knew when I bought it, it was worth $600,000. Everything that I buy, I will not buy a property unless I'm buying it undervalued. And the way you do that is you double-end an appraisal. What I mean by that is whenever you're buying a piece of real estate, you're going to get an appraisal done up front. We have an amazing appraiser here with us this weekend. His name is Eddie Riaz. He owns Community Appraisals. Make sure you stop by their booth out there. Eddie is my personal appraiser. Every deal I do, I get him to do the appraisals on him because he's that freaking good. So when he did this appraisal, he said, yeah, it's worth about 600 grand. I was buying it for 520, so that checks the box. Every project I do, I won't buy anything in real estate until I get an appraisal that confirms that I'm getting it undervalued. I bought the Hay Bay Resort. We paid 3.2 for it. It was worth over 4 million. And it's really, really simple. As you get better at this, there are many, many ways that you can confirm the value of the properties that you're buying. The easiest ways to do it are what you're seeing right here. When you're working with an agent, tell your agents when you're out looking for properties that you won't buy a property unless you're getting it undervalued. You can use appraisals, and what's going to happen over time, the more you do this, you can just see it. When you're looking at a property, you'll know that it's undervalued. The next thing is how you acquire these properties. And you need to acquire these properties using debt. I want to explain what debt stacking is, and I want to do this now because I'm going to ask everybody to go out and talk to each other about this in a few minutes. But every single piece of real estate I've ever bought, I use a technique called debt stacking to get a lower overall interest rate and get my deals properly funded. And I'm going to use the example. Now, I need somebody to pull out a calculator because I've done this 100 times, but I can never get the math right because I'm not that smart. Is there anybody here that, you understand all this stuff, but that's one of the things you're worried about? You're willing to admit you're really not that smart, especially when it comes to math and things like that? Me and that one guy in the back of the room. I'm with you, brother. I can't, I have a real hard time with math, but here we go. Let me explain this. So whenever I buy any type of real estate, 100% financing, and I use debt stacking to lower the overall effective interest rate. And this is the way it works. So in that case, I bought a property for $465,000. $465,000 I paid for this property. The very first thing I do is I go to a mortgage broker. Well, I'm going to put together a package right up front so I can show the mortgage broker what the project is and how it's working. I'll talk about that later. But in this case, I buy it for this. I have a mortgage broker that can pretty well get me 80% of anything that I buy. So what's 80% of 465? 372? So I got a first mortgage for $372,000. And I'll get that mortgage in today's rates at 8.5% interest. How much interest am I going to pay? Now, these are private mortgages. So that means all of the interest, or the money I'm paying is interest-only payments. What's the total interest over a one-year term for that? So I'm going to pay $29,750 in interest on that. Now, whenever I do this, I go to a mortgage broker and I tell the mortgage broker right up front, I'm going to get 100% financing on this because all the mortgages that come after this, the second and the third, this guy in first place has to be okay with that, has to give permission for that. So I get that done. Then I go and I get a second mortgage for the difference, which is how much? 92,000 even? 93,000. And I'll get that mortgage at today's rates at about 11%, which is 11% of 93 grand. 10,230. So 10,230 grand. And then, before I arrange any mortgages, while I'm still in my conditions period and looking at a property, I'm going to figure out what the total budget for renovations is. In that case of the property I showed you, I spent I spent $200,000 on renovations. Well, I actually spent less than that because in that third mortgage, I get a mortgage that gives me all the money I need to renovate the property, but we also have an interest reserve in that mortgage, meaning I even borrow all the money to make the payments. So anybody here that thought that they couldn't do this because they don't have any money, you don't have to worry about it. It's very normal to put an interest reserve inside of that third mortgage. So here's the way I do this. Pay close attention to this. If I'm flipping a property, I plan to flip it in 6 months, meaning that I'll buy the property, so I'll do the whole deal in 6 months, and here's why. When I'm borrowing the money for the interest, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add up the total of the interest between these two first mortgages. So somebody grab a calculator and add $29,750 to $10,230. What's the total of that? $39,980. So 40 grand. So in this case, I had 160 grand that I used to renovate the property, and I had $40,000 in the interest reserve, which gave me a total third mortgage of $200,000. That third mortgage, I'll get it at 15%. So what's 15% of $200,000? Even? So 30 grand on the third mortgage. Now, one more little thing we have to do here. This interest, the reason I create that interest reserve of $40,000 is because the interest requires making monthly payments. And I don't want to borrow any more money than I have to, but I'm going to borrow enough to create the payments for these things. So what we need to do now, let's divide $29,750 by 12. 2479. So that means I'm going to have a monthly payment on that first mortgage of $2479. Now on 10,230, $852. So every month on those two mortgages, if I add those together, what do I get? $2479 and $852. So every month, I'm going to have $3,331 in interest payments that I have to make, which now on top of that, I got to take this $30,000 mortgage, divide that by 12. How much do I get? I've got to add the $2,500 now, which means my monthly payments are now basically $5,800 for all three mortgages. Now, some people seeing me do this math are in this audience right now, and you're thinking, well, isn't that more risky because you're not actually borrowing enough money for all three of these interest amounts? My interest reserve, I only borrow enough money for the first two. Here's why. This is over a 12-month term. But if I succeed, and normally when I do a flip, I only do them if I know I can sell it in 6 months. But if I succeed in selling that in 6 months, my interest reserve is going to be enough to, what's 5,800 times 12? 5,800 times 12? 60 grand, something like that. 69,000. And if I divide that by 2 or take half of that, I'm basically looking at $35,000. So when I'm doing the flip, as long as I borrow all the money to cover 12 months of interest on the first two mortgages, it's always going to give me enough money to cover all three mortgages for 6 months. Now, some folks are saying, okay, but that's a little risky. What happens if you don't sell it right away? What happens if you don't do this? What are you going to do then? I don't do deals unless I know I can exit out of them. Never get into a deal unless you know you can get out of it. And how I do that, when I'm looking at any type of property, especially short-term things like house flips, I'm going to make sure that I always give myself a good buffer to get out of a deal. Here's what I mean. When I go out and buy the property and I figure out how much money I'm going to need to renovate it, whatever that total number is, which in this case is $665,000. Is that right? Yep, 665 grand that I borrowed in this project. When I got the appraisal done, I get an appraisal done right up front called an ARV appraisal. So I get 2 appraisals done whenever I do a real estate deal. And I always get these appraisals done before I waive the conditions. I get an as-is appraisal done, which tells me what it's worth now, and I want to make sure I'm buying it for less. And then I get an ARV appraisal done. And most people don't know that an appraiser can do these for you at the same time. Eddie charges me about $1,500 to do both appraisals up front. And if the numbers don't come back in the appraisals, I don't do the deal. I'm out $1,500, but it saves me making a bigger mistake. So when I'm looking at these appraisals, I will not do a deal unless the ARV appraisal on a flip comes back at least $200,000 more than that, so $865,000. Because that $200K lift gives me enough money in profit that if I try to sell the place and something happens in the market and things aren't selling, I can go down 100 grand and still sell the property and still make 100 grand. Like seriously, how many people would have their lives radically changed if you had an extra 100 grand in your bank account in the next 6 months? Put your hands up, good and high. Everybody in this fucking room. If you don't flip properties, you're crazy. If you need to make more money in your life and you're not flipping properties, it's because you don't understand it, I'm sure. So I was able to get all the money inside of there to cover that interest. I sell the property. Now, what's debt stacking? Because of the way mortgages work, if I borrow the money like this, I always borrow the money in 3 different mortgages because the interest rates averaged out can give me a lower overall effective interest rate. So grab your calculator again. I want you to add together 8.5, 11, and 15. Once you got that number, divide by 3 and tell me what you get. 11.5. 11.5%. So think about this for a second. This is why debt stacking using 3 mortgages, like I've just described to you, is a smart idea and it's going to save you money. It's because it's a lower overall effective interest rate. If you do it this way, you can get a first mortgage for 8, 9%. The reason that these people are willing to give you a lower interest rate is they're in first position. So if anything ever goes wrong, they're going to get their money back. Because the risk is lower for them, they give you a lower interest rate. The second mortgage, you can get one for 11% right now because that 93 grand only takes the loan up to what I paid for the property. So the risk is higher. If it went into default and it wasn't finished, they'd probably lose a bit of that money. That's why they're charging a higher interest rate. The 15% is the highest because these people are lending money over the value of the property. How many people, I want you guys to be honest with me, how many people came here today and you didn't even realize that there are lenders out there that will lend you more money than the house is actually worth? Raise your hands if that's a new concept to you. Yeah, this happens all the time in real estate investing. But their interest rate's going to be higher. Now, why would they, if we're talking about risk, and these first 2 mortgages are covered because it only brings you up to what we paid for the property, but this guy is lending me more money than the property's worth up front before we even get started, and he's got a higher risk, obviously, because of that. But why would he do that? What would make somebody want to lend money to somebody that's more money than what the property's actually worth? I talked about it earlier. It's that ARV appraisal. So when I put together these lenders packages, I say that if you're borrowing that money up front like that, or if I've got an appraisal done that says the place is worth $865. They're lending the money based on that value and based on my ability to actually perform and get that stuff done. Does that make sense? How many people in this room right now, raise your hands if this idea of debt stacking and a lower overall effective interest rate is a new concept to you that you just learned here today? Come on, raise your hands. Yeah, so friends, it's little things like this that if you become a regular attendee of events like this, these are the things that, it's the gold you're going to pick up. All right, let's move on here. Oh, yeah. So out at our mortgage booth out there, you're going to meet this young lady later this weekend, Felicia Harmon. We're going to be telling you all weekend about a program that I run called the Investors Growth Syndicate. This is a program that we're building across Canada that we have dozens and dozens of people joining every month. And inside of this community, we offer to help people fund their real estate deals. We're building a list of lenders. We have thousands of lenders across Canada that work directly with Felicia. And whenever a member of the syndicate needs to get mortgages arranged to do a deal like this, Felicia takes care of it. And she's amazing. Let's have a big round of applause for Felicia. Increasing the value of the property. You're going to hear a lot about this weekend. We're going to do a panel tomorrow where you're going to get lots of information about how you create those value increases. The big thing, the takeaway, the broad strokes takeaway about increasing the value is use appraisals. When you get into a deal you're looking at, get a budget put together so you know exactly what it's going to cost you to do it. Give that budget to the appraiser and all the details on the property you're purchasing. They'll tell you what it's going to be worth in the end. Don't do a deal unless you have appraisals that are going to support what you're getting. And then that exit, again, never ever get into a real estate deal unless you know how to get out of that real estate deal. And friends, when you leave here this weekend, these 4 steps that you're going to learn about through this entire weekend are going to help you to build a massive real estate portfolio. And I'm really, really excited about it. Okay. And so when you go off and start talking to each other, I want you to try using this interrogation technique. I want you to learn as much as you can about the person you're talking to. Here's how interrogations worked. We'd get into the room, we'd start a general conversation, and I'd begin a sequence of events called the hunt for common ground. So when you're talking to each other, I want you to create some small talk, get to know each other, figure out where, find something that you have in common. I'll give you a hint. It's fucking real estate. You all have real estate in common. And then start asking the person questions, get to know them. So one person is going to ask the other person a question, get to know them, take 5 minutes to do that. After 5 minutes, you're going to hear me yell, switch, then you switch, and the other person starts asking the questions. At the end of the sequence, I'm going to have somebody run around with a mic, and I'm going to ask a couple of you to introduce the person you were talking to. Does that make sense to everybody? All right, so we're going to take 10 minutes. We'll play a little music as we're doing this. Go meet somebody new, and I'll be back with you in 10 minutes from now.